Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us here for this 21st Century Workforce webinar from Valley Vision. This is going to be about the job shift in the capital region. And I'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, make sure that you're on mute, so to disable any background noise. Go ahead and disable your video unless you're a speaker, and we'll get started. So my name is Evan Schmidt. I'm the Senior Director of Research and Strategy here at Valley Vision. Valley Vision is a nonprofit and a civic leadership organization that's committed to collaboratively solving problems in the region. And that's what these webinar series are really all about. This is our second one in the last week and a half, where we've tried to pull people together somewhat quickly to address critical issues in the region around our core impact areas. As you can see on the screen, one of our core impact areas is workforce. We do a lot of work in workforce, and the types of roles that we have, we do a lot of research, we do market intelligence, we bring people together to align employers with education and workforce development agencies in order to strengthen our talent development pipeline. And we have a lot of different projects and initiatives that we work in this area. And for today, I think what we really want to talk about is the absolutely tremendous economic shift we're seeing right now. Isabel, I think you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I think everybody is seeing in the news and experiencing all the different shifts and trends around the economy that are really unprecedented in recent years. And we want to start to have that conversation to talk about what are we seeing, what kind of economic trends are we seeing, what are the impacted sectors in our region, what are some resources that are available, and what does the response look like in the capital region. And I think, you know, in this time of real public health crisis, I think it's really important to put front and center that the health and well-being for the people in our region is the top priority. It's the most important thing we can all be focusing on. But I also think economic resiliency is a conversation we need to be having, and we need to be talking about how are we helping people respond to what's happening now, and looking into the future, how are we going to be helping people recover and be prepared for what comes next, whatever that looks like. So that's really what this conversation today is all about. I'm really happy to welcome our first speaker, Julia Wolfe. She's from the Economic Policy Institute. She's a state economic analyst. I found her because some of the research that she's been doing was quoted in the Sba article, doing a lot around job loss and job trends. So I invited her to speak with us today. Really happy to have you. I'm gonna turn it over to you, and you're gonna address what's happening with jobs right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Wolfe. I work at the Economic Policy Institute based out of DC, and I do economic research on state policy and coordinate a network of progressive state policy groups across the country, including quite a few groups in California. So I'm just going to go ahead and give an overview of what we've seen so far. I don't think any of this will be surprising to you, but it is still shocking. And I'll talk a little bit about what we've seen so far and then what we'll expect to see next. So yeah, thank you. So I think everyone has probably seen some version of this really unfortunate chart, which shows the incredible spike in unemployment insurance claims that we saw in just 2 weeks. So 3 weeks ago, there were 3.3 million initial claims filed. And then the week after that, that number doubled to 6.6 million. So far in these 2 weeks alone, 10 million people have filed initial unemployment insurance claims. And that dwarfs anything that we've seen since the Department of Labor has been tracking this by an incredible amount. We also estimate that's not shown here, but about 3.5 million of these unemployment insurance claims also represent workers who lost their employer-provided health insurance as a result of their job loss. And so that represents about 2/3 of these claims in this 2-week period. And the only reason that, or sorry, 1/3, it only represents 1/3. And the reason that's so low is because we're seeing industries hit where workers didn't have these benefits to begin with, but still that represents like a huge loss of health insurance at a time when people really need it the most. And then we can go to the next slide and talk about the states. So in this 2-week period that we've been talking about, every single state posted a record number of unemployment insurance claims. No one was left behind there, unfortunately. And so this map kind of gets at the intensity of the claim. It shows the percentage change in this 2-week period. And so you can see states like Michigan, Indiana were hit particularly hard. And I just want to point out that just because some of these states are looking paler on the map, the low end of the scale is still showing an 800% increase in unemployment insurance claims. So the low of Wyoming was still an 800% increase. And then also another thing to point out about this chart is that some states, like for Nevada, for example, look a little lighter, or Washington, but that's just because they were getting hit a little bit earlier, so that percentage change doesn't look as extreme, but it still is a really bad picture for them. And in the last week alone of unemployment insurance claims, California, Pennsylvania, New York, and Michigan each individually saw more claims in 1 week than the entire country saw 2 weeks before this hit. So it's happening incredibly quickly and at incredibly high levels. And so this represents not only job loss, but it represents a huge strain on the administratively on these systems of trying to get these workers their lost wages, and they're just not built to handle this volume of demand. And they've really kind of been, those systems have been worn down in most states over the years to a point where they probably couldn't have even dealt with a Great Recession type filing of unemployment insurance claims. And so this is really unfortunate. And then we can see some industry detail if we go to the next slide. So this is the most current information we have on the job losses by industry. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics monthly jobs report that they put out. And I just want to note that this data is really only tracking like the middle of March. So it's really only getting the beginning of what we're starting to see here. But what it shows us is something that I think most of us knew intuitively was happening, is that the leisure and hospitality sectors are getting hit incredibly hard by this. That's where you see restaurants, bars, museums, parks, amusement parks, hotels. Those are the things that fall into that category, and those are the places that need to close for public health measures or dramatically cut back their staff and just be having to-go service or whatever. And so it absolutely devastating losses there, and this is only the beginning. This is only capturing the very beginning of it. Yeah. And then on the next slide, I'll just talk quickly about kind of what we expect to see going forward. So this map comes from a projection that we did based on the Goldman Sachs on one of their most recent estimates of how much GDP we expect to lose. And based on that estimate, we are expecting that by summer alone, we'll see around 20 million jobs lost. And there's a lot of reasons why that might be kind of a conservative estimate, and things could actually be a lot worse than that. We've already seen 10 million unemployment insurance claims so far. We don't even know what happened last week. But based on these estimates that just kind of keep getting worse, our most recent guess is that about 20 million jobs will be lost by summer. And this map kind of shows how we expect that to be distributed by states. And the way that we're projecting that is we're expecting this analysis to be really broad-based and hit most industries. We're expecting it to kind of reach all corners of the economy, but we do still expect leisure, hospitality, and retail as well to be hit kind of fastest and hardest. And so this kind of splits the difference and says in states like Nevada, like Hawaii, where we see them really rely on tourism, they're going to be a little bit harder hit. But we really still do expect all states, all sectors to be hit really hard by that. So that's what I have so far. But looking forward to hearing any specific questions you have on this data. Thanks.
Thanks, Julia. And that is very sobering data. One question I have is, do you have a sense of, a lot of this is about job loss, but I'm also reading in the news some about job shifts. So are there ways that there are employers who are hiring up right now? I know that, for example, in grocery, there's hiring going on. Are people being redeployed in different ways? Is that data that you've seen at all?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And unfortunately, the data on that isn't great so far. We have a lot of data to look forward to where we'll really get to dig into that. For example, the labor turnover survey that BLS puts out, but that's like on quite a bit of a lag, and we only have February so far for that. What we did see in the jobs report for this month, for the month of March, which again is kind of like looking in the rear view mirror, two places that I did notice upticks that I would say are probably related to this are in general merchandise stores. So that's your big box retailers like Walmart or Target. I didn't see an uptick in grocery stores specifically, although I wouldn't be surprised by that going forward. Also in warehousing and storage is another place where there was a bit of an uptick last month in employment. And so I think that would be a shift we would likely see going forward. And we're definitely seeing that in the news, that these workers have increasing demands put on them and that they're kind of coming out with important demands of their own for protection, etc.
Good. Yeah, thanks. So another question I have is kind of this idea of, we know that we're in crisis right now. We know there's very significant economic impacts, even probably, going into summer, which is what your slide is here. Do you have a sense of what changes might kind of get back to normal once everything opens up again versus changes that might be more long-term or long-lasting?
Mm-hmm. So one change that I think we can work towards making happen at the end, or one that will kind of allow us to recover quicker, is right now as we've seen, a huge base of our economy is in these service sectors. It relies on people going out and having fun and eating food and going to the movies. And if throughout this process, people are losing their jobs and losing income and not getting that replaced by any sort of intervention, that then at the end of this, we're going to see when people finally can go out and spend money, they want to go out and have fun again finally, they won't be able to if they don't have any money to spend. So I'm not sure which way that'll go just now. I'm not super optimistic that we'll be able to bounce back right away. I'm not super optimistic about our will to replace people's income throughout this crisis. And so then we could end up seeing these really lasting closures of businesses, especially small businesses, restaurants, etc., which would be unfortunate.
And I see some questions have come in from the audience. And Emma, I think you were going to help staff those questions. Can you point us to any, or can you read for us any questions that have come in?
Yeah, so there was a question here from Jason. What are the expected impacts on logistics and transportation jobs? You mentioned short-term uptick. Are we expecting a huge long-term drop due to the recession even when stores do open?
Yeah, it's hard to speculate. Again, if we see this long-term decrease in demand, then there's going to end up being a decrease in demand for that supply chain all along the way and for those jobs throughout the process. Because even if people still need to buy groceries, and that creates jobs for truck drivers to be hauling those across the country, if they're not also hauling that to restaurants, that's ultimately going to be a drop in demand. I do think, of course, we're seeing people ordering many things to be delivered to them now. And I was actually surprised to not see an uptick in the careers job category in last jobs report. But that would be one that I would absolutely keep watching, that transportation and warehousing sector in every jobs report. I'll be interested to see what happens.
Awesome. And just, we have time for one more, Evan?
Sure.
Okay. Is there a forecast for local and state government employment in California?
I do not have one of those. One of our state partners might. I don't have one offhand, but that would be really interesting. And one thing that you definitely saw during the Great Recession was state and local governments' budgets really being strained by responding to that and by the loss of revenue that they see go along with people's loss of income. And then the result was cuts in terms of public sector employment and in terms of pensions. And now that, cutting public sector jobs that might be administrating things like unemployment insurance, and then seeing us in the situation we're in is not a great thing. And so, and that's something I would really hope to see in this fourth package from Congress, is a lot more aid for state and local governments, so we don't make the same mistakes again, especially in terms of public sector employment.
Great, thanks. And I think one thing we saw from the recession recently was that Sacramento was a little bit insulated because of our state government focus here. And so I think there's might be a possibility there as well. All right, well, thank you so much for your presentation. Really sobering to hear the numbers and the data, but I do think it's important to kind of be moving forward with our eyes wide open. And what I'd like to do now is kind of turn to those who are here in the region to talk about the impact that it's having across different sectors. And Julie, I hope you can stay with us and potentially answer some questions at the end as well. So we saw in her slide on sectors that this is having a really different impact on different sectors. And so we have three representatives here. We have Damon Conklin from the Sacramento Region Builders Exchange, Joy Hermsen, who's representing retail, hospitality, and tourism. And we have Jason King from Robert Half Technology, which is a temporary employment service agency, among other things, who can kind of talk about what they're seeing in terms of deploying workers temporarily. The starkest numbers that we saw, I think, were around hospitality, retail, and tourism. So we're gonna do this kind of as a panel, and so I'm gonna ask all of you the same first question, but I'm gonna start with Joy. And can we actually go to the next slide for a minute, Isabel, so I can see the question? There we go. Can you give an overview just of the experiences in your sector overall, and what have you seen that's changing the most, and what's the most pressing issue for you? And do a short introduction as well. But I'll turn to you first, Joy.
Sure. Thank you so much. And Trish and all of you at Valley Vision really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation, especially given what Julia has shared. These are really sobering data points, and we're all experiencing it in different ways. But so my background, I lead statewide strategy for retail, hospitality, and tourism for the Workforce Economic Development Division of the California Community Colleges. So if you can think of us as sort of a liaison between what the colleges are doing in career education, my sector is this one, of course, but I have other counterparts that work in health and manufacturing and all the other important sectors, priority sectors for the state. Joining the call also by phone is Josh Swigert. He's the regional director in the Far North region, which includes Sacramento. And so Josh and I are really eager to share with you some of the things that are happening, also listen. But I would say the pressing things we're seeing on both sides of that bridge that we kind of connect people on, right? On the educational side, if you think about how college and education moves to online formats, career education is one of the hardest to do because it's a hands-on kind of training. If you think of traditional vocational training programs like, so being able to, one, deliver that, but also have students continue, as you saw Governor Newsom with nursing, this help figuring out how students can continue in their training so they don't get stopped, but also putting them to work in a way that they can help. So that educational piece for us on the career education side has been a real challenge. Luckily, a kitchen is actually one of the few places you can replicate pretty easily at home, whereas if you're doing some other vocational training, it might be harder to do. On the other side of that bridge are our industry partners, where we've built relationships to do things like internships, apprenticeships, work-based learning opportunities. And so really they're hurting in a big way right now. And so the pressing issues we're dealing with is, how do we support those programs to continue training, and how do we listen to our industry partners to really be able to support what they're doing with the workers they are able to keep them safe and well trained, but also perhaps working with folks like, we have associations such as the California Hotel and Lodging Association, which is really trying to figure out, how do I train all these displaced workers to do something else, because we care about them and we can't employ them right now, but what can we give them? So I would say those are kind of the two big things for us in our area right now.
Thanks, Joy. And what about your industry partners? What kind of, what are they seeing throughout the state or here in Sacramento around this sector?
Well, if you take that slide that Julia had shown, where you saw this flat and then sort of a huge spike in unemployment claims, and flip it, and you think about 10 years of growth for the hospitality world, which, if you think about, everything you do for fun is in the sector, right? So we haven't even mentioned sports arenas. I mean, Sacramento has the Golden One Center. Every single time we get that Sacramento Republic, which is a new MLS team, soon to be opening in 2 years, hopefully, right, their arena. So just even hanging out for a coffee, these things. So if you think of that upside down, kind of thing, where it's fine and then there's a cliff, right? So I'm just looking at some tourism economics, released some data through CalTravel this past week. I want you to try to get your head around this number. So from the first week of March to the first week of April, $2.4 billion loss in travel in California alone. That's an 84% drop. So that is not like, that is like, right? And so our folks are really scrambling. And yet we do have opportunities where hotels are serving first responders, serving to help keep homeless folks safe. And so there's a whole realm of education and skills that they need to be able to do that safely, and then and actually be able to survive. And the other thing to think about is that most of the businesses in the sector, estimated between 70 to 80% in the sector, are small businesses. So that what Julia mentioned in terms of federal support for these businesses to be able to continue, those who choose to, is going to be a major part of how we hope they can come out on the other side. And the other thing to think about is there's a long-term effect. We're thinking 18 months, 2 years, 3 years from now before we can even be at any kind of normal, just because of how tourism takes a long time to get back on track. You think about long trips you'll be taking, and Lynn Moorfield from the California Hotel and Lodging Association was sharing these perspectives with us. But you take a year to plan some of these vacations. And so if we want international business to come back, or travelers, it takes a while. So lots to unpack there, but really trying to be sensitive to what our employers are really struggling with right now, which is just day-to-day cash flow.
Great, thanks, Joy. Let's talk kind of same question to Damon, to talk about what's going on with builders and construction. What are you seeing?
Sure. Well, the Sacramento Regional Builders Exchange has been around since 1901. It's the area's oldest and largest trade association for industrial and commercial construction. And we advocate on behalf of our members at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. We worked with Governor Newsom and his staff starting on March 16th, and we're helping his office along with our industry partners on recognizing and defining essential services and ensuring that construction was included in that. And what we've seen is each of the counties implementing their own county orders that, if stricter than the state orders, supersede those, and not all recognizing construction. And so we've created this patchwork of about 58 counties adopting some variations of orders that either completely recognize construction or have virtually shut construction down. And even in the best case scenario, let's say here in Sacramento, where construction is considered essential, is moving forward, there are still some major interruptions to the supply chain for those projects. And in jurisdictions outside of Sacramento County that have adopted an order that has recognized construction as an essential order, unfortunately, we're seeing desks that are closed or on rotation, pulling permits, or even trying to schedule for a inspection is greatly interrupted, and those barriers are causing further delays. And so, even those sectors that are working are struggling in the current environment. Many projects take 18 months at a minimum to go from inception to actual moving forward and getting your general contractors and subs, and so it takes a tremendous amount of time to get these projects to not only pencil out, but to find the companies that will work on them. And so we're not going to be able to see any data in the next week or two on this. This is changing literally day by day by day. And so a lot of our members are just trying to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. One of the biggest concerns for us, obviously, is prior to COVID-19, we have already had a 5-to-1 ratio of a skilled workforce gap, meaning for every 5 construction workers that were on the project site that are looking to or scheduled to retire, we had 1 coming out of the apprenticeships to backfill them. This has only exacerbated that. And one silver lining, though, is that as construction companies are operating and other sectors are contracting, this is a great opportunity for those that want to reboot their careers and try to find a wonderful career opportunity in construction and the trades. I suspect that as we start seeing the federal government providing stimulus packages aimed at smaller businesses and to kind of reignite the economy, that we'll start seeing those resources there to provide a little greater stabilization and reliability on some of the smaller companies. It has been a struggle for the entire industry. One of the other issues that we're looking at is upstream on the workforce development and specifically career technical education. And to the kind of echo the earlier comments, those types of classes and apprenticeships are primarily tactile and in nature and require a hands-on learning environment and cannot be replicated successfully in a virtual setting. And so we have a education foundation that has been launched and gone statewide. It's the California Industry Education Foundation, and that has really some major tentpole programs and activities, that being design build competition for junior and senior high school students, as well as a trades day. Last year's trades day, we were upwards to 2,500 students at Cal Expo here in Sacramento. Obviously, with the school shutdowns and being able to expose those students to the career opportunities that exist in our industry, there's now some interruption there. So we're taking to virtual space where we can. The design bill, we're pleased to announce, or at least share with everyone here, that we'll be able to bring some of those design bill components into a virtual setting, but not all of it. And a lot of the apprenticeship programs and a lot of the workforce development programs are, again, struggling to bridge that gap with students in order to create those workforce supply chains from classrooms to careers.
Well, that's a great point to make that bridge between what we're experiencing now and the training that we need to still keep our eye on, both in the hospitality sector and the construction sector. That's a really important component. I want to bring Jason King into this conversation. I think that temporary employment agencies have a great visibility into what are the short-term needs that are out there and how are people being deployed. And I'm interested to learn more about what you're experiencing.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you very much for asking me to be a part of this. And we are definitely right at the forefront of this health crisis right now. For those of you that don't know, Robert Half, global staffing firm. We've been around for a little over 70 years, oldest and largest specialized firm out there right now. Brief update on me. I've been with Orange Staffing in the recruitment industry for about 16 years now, focusing specifically in technology over the last 8 years, all the way partnering with clients in both the public and the private sector. Just to give you a scope of like what our operation does. So just last year in the Sacramento region and Central Valley region, which are the two territories I oversee, we placed close to 4,000 individuals in both temporary and permanent jobs. So we deal with a lot of customers in that particular aspect. Every industry is being impacted on a multitude of levels right now. Where we're seeing as of right now is organizations just trying to keep them operational and moving forward. That would be the biggest thing. And I think all of us have, in one way, shape, or form, been required to work remote. And that, adds in a whole different layer when it comes into, and there are organizations that didn't have the infrastructure to be, have an entire workforce work remotely. There are policies and procedures within organizations right now on that piece. So we're partnering with a lot of companies when it comes to remote work and that type of expertise. There's a lot of need right now for business continuity and planning when it comes to that. But I would say at the very forefront for what we're seeing is the data and privacy security piece of it. I don't know, and this was an interesting stat I read from Microsoft, but since the COVID health crisis, phishing attempts and hacking attempts have gone up over 627%, which is completely, jaw-dropping when you think of that. And then additionally, I know we're all on Zoom right now, but I just learned this term today from my wife. Has anyone heard of Zoom bombing? This is something I literally, I heard the term, but we are going through just a huge data security and privacy piece right now and working with clients. I know that there's been a lot of doom and gloom, and I know that there has been a lot of depressing messaging that's been going around, and I'm right in the middle of it with all of you guys. But there is a component where hiring is still a priority from some organizations that are out there right now. And we have definitely seen an uptick when it comes to that, specifically on a technology front, and preparing for what the new norm is going to be, because we don't know if we're going to come out of this in May and, organizations that didn't have the ability to stand up remotely, are they just going to continuously stand up remotely and try to shift their business operations to provide a remote workforce? So this is a new thing for all of us, and those are some of the things that we're seeing currently today and partnering with clients in that particular front.
Thank you. And I think you bring up, that was really interesting, and I think you bring up this good point of what kind of new normal might we be moving into, and will it look the same as before? And I think, right now we're right in the midst of a crisis. We're trying to respond. This crisis will be over at some point. So, the question is, what's going to go back to normal and what's going to be changed for good? So I think that would be my next question for everybody on the panel. Kind of, what do you see as some opportunities or some possibilities that might have, both on the opportunity side and on the risk side, what has some long-term consequences? Maybe start with Joy again.
Sure. Something that Jason brought up, and actually when Julia was thinking about, I've been reaching out to some of our industry partners, and in addition to warehousing, at least anecdotally, we're starting to see things like Instacart, Rite Aid. They've announced big hires now, right? The question is if we can help keep those workers safe. That's important until we have a vaccine. I think the other piece is, if you think about We live in California, and one of the people I spoke to recently was an assistant winemaker at Duckhorn Wine Brands, and their sales are up. So beer, spirits, wine, right? Their production, they're hiring production staff. The winery business continues. They have work that needs to be done in the fields. They have bottling that needs to be done. They're willing to train. How many people, raise your hand, or have you ordered pizza takeout recently? So Leprino Foods is the major cheese supplier. I used to work in, full disclosure, I used to work for a big pizza chain called Round Table Pizza. And they're in Stockton, Central Valley employer, working 3 shifts around the clock because they need to supply the nation's cheese supply for all the major chains. So you're seeing Domino's, a lot of already takeout and delivery pizza chains, but also just that. So we're some of the food ingredient suppliers and food and ag being so big in the region. I think it's interesting for us to think about that the landscape of restaurants, they're small business, usually how many people will choose to come back on the education front. If you think about some of the issues in K-12 that people were worried about with their kids having to go to school, maybe worrying about things like shootings or bullying or just disengagement, if their kids are flourishing online, what does that mean? And that goes for colleges too. Do we need to pay for things like education together? Certainly for CTE, as Damon pointed out so astutely, we're struggling with how to get that actual training, which is handed down. So many of these industries, even in facilities management, something like they're half of the workforce who run facilities, think hospitals, not just hotels and arenas and Disneyland kind of amusement parks, but office buildings, banks, hotels, grocery stores. These facilities need to be managed, but that takes technical skill. It also takes a lot of learned knowledge that apprentices usually get, or you get through internships as well as training. So really for us, it's delivering that in a way that can match the pace that industry needs and really keep people employed. And our hotel partners, I mentioned Lynn Moorfield earlier, he knows they're not going to be able to come back at the same place that they were even last month. We know we're not going to need the full scope of employees. So what does that actually mean? Whether we like it or not, all of us need to be, even in any space, we're all needing to be sanitary experts, right? So even just to be in an office. What does that actually mean in terms of how we can help the people that need it the most? And that's the other area we're dealing with. And I know Valley Vision's been a big proponent of all this. We can't do online work or online training if we don't have broadband and if we don't have the equipment people need to be able to access the information. So that's a huge other piece we don't have time to go into here. But these are those things that need to change that I think are good, that are kind of opportunities for us to really make a change that would help everyone. That's one piece. And then I also think the resilience of we're in that sector where you go because someone takes care of you, and you go because it's fun. And so how can we continue to hold on to that, and it'll come back even stronger? But trying to remind people that's one of the most important things we can do virtually, so that we stay connected as humans, because that's really at the core of all this.
Great, thanks, Joy.
Good point.
What about you, Damon? What do you see in construction around things that might change for good?
Well, construction has basically a 9-10 split as far as those that can remote work or tether online from home, with 90% requiring to be out at the job site. Prior to COVID-19, construction companies in California have dealt with some of the most stringent and regulatory requirements to keep workers safe in very challenging work environments. And we've done so remarkably well. I think since the start of COVID-19 outbreak, the construction industry has adopted even more enhanced and stringent safety protocols based on CDC guidelines to fight against the spread of COVID-19. And I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that coming out, where companies are going to, there'll be an enhanced and at least more of a priority and focus, even more so than they already are, with making sure that employees are pre-screened in case it's just general flu and things like that. I think there's just going to be this enhanced environment and culture at job sites for employee safety, and that primarily has only come up during seasonal heat, blooms of heats and rashes and things of that nature, where the focus has been more on isolated specific issues, whether it's airborne silicate in particular matter, or we're going through a heat rash and trying to just keep those employees in those geographical areas insulated from that. I think that much like the other industries that are employees are looking to reboot their careers, I think construction is going to be one of those areas where the virtual learning is going to be kind of more baked into delivering the content. And so I think we're going to see where it's been predominantly based in architectures and engineering occupations. We're going to start seeing more BIM, or building informational models, where they're going to be adopting more innovative, technologically advanced delivery systems. I think we're going to see more virtual reality, augmented reality, in order to simulate and create environments for students to do both hands-on, but also do something that helps kind of bridge that technological gap that we've seen for decades. That when you think of technological innovations, you don't immediately think of the construction industry. And I think that this situation is going to cause the construction to really warmly embrace a lot of those new technological advancements. We've seen it with drones, we've seen it with others, but this I think is going to be a triggering mechanism to kind of help catapult it and be really a catalyst for that. I think we're going to start seeing it across all the different high schools and junior colleges, and hopefully that will start create a little bit more of a mind change and a cultural shift on how people view construction industry, not as a low-paying dirty job, but actually a rewarding career that they can utilize some of these great and quite frankly cool technological advances in their day-to-day careers.
Great, yeah, thanks, Damon. And it sounds like these technology advances are a bit of a theme. Jason, you talked about the way technology might enhance operations moving forward differently than it has been in the past. Anything else you would add around what you see around what might really stick and change things?
I just think, Damon brought up a fantastic point. One that we are already seeing right now is we're almost being pushed and have to be innovative sooner than some organizations and some individuals wanted to be. And I think that's with anything, right? I think we all obviously want to work within our own pace, whether that is individually or from a business perspective. But I think, now we're even walking to, and I just think about granular things that we're working with companies right now. How do you onboard somebody virtually? How do you interview and hire virtually? How do you do these mechanisms in a way that, and we don't know what the virus is going to do or this health crisis is going to do. It may completely shift the paradigm of how we interact person to person. And organizations, when you think about a consumer or a brick and mortar, how we walk into a brick and mortar today, we don't know if that's going to ever be the same. And so organizations are looking at ways, to Damon's point, they're being forced to look at technological advances and how to keep operational moving forward when it comes to those things. And it's fascinating at the same time. It's scary also at the same time. I live in technology, so I mean, these are things that we have talked about, and I obviously can't go into client names and those things, but we've even had, I had never even thought about this, but we do a lot of our hiring and staffing mainly in the Sacramento region, Central Valley, partner with clients. People draw from that community. We've already had clients reaching out to us wanting to broaden that capability, because now a job that was done before sitting in an office now is being shifted potentially to remote work. So now people can start looking outside of the normal Sacramento region and other areas for potential people to complete projects. And that's not across the board, but just these things are starting to roll, and clients and our customers and businesses are already starting to have these conversations to prepare themselves for things not to be the same. And I think that's just a shift and change as far as what we're seeing right now.
Great, thanks. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists. Really appreciate your insights and what you're seeing on the ground, and really also appreciated kind of the long-term nature of this conversation, talking about how we continue to build resilient systems and how we adapt to what's happening. Keeping that in mind, there's also the importance of what's happening right now. How are we responding, and how are we helping people's pain points at this moment? So I want to bring our next speakers in to talk about the resources that are available and the response that's going on here in the Sacramento region. So first, I'd like to introduce Heather Luzzi from the Small Business Administration to talk about the resources that are available through that entity. Heather, are you there? I know she was earlier.
I'm here. Okay, I think
Great.
I'm unmuted now.
All right.
I apologize. Thank you so much, Evan. I appreciate the conversation, and I'm actually, it was just fascinating listening to the panelists. I think that there's so much going on right now, and honestly, things that we hadn't thought of previously. That, you know, in the next 6, 12, 18 months, things are really going to be shifting in a much different direction. And, you know, long-term wise, it really remains to be seen the impacts of the COVID-19 coronavirus, the crisis, along with that. With the U.S. Small Business Administration, we are a federal agency funded by tax dollars. So we have several different facets to the way that, that the agency works. But typically, we provide loan guarantees to our lending partners, and the entire focus of the agency is surrounding small business. We also assist in areas of disaster. And typically when we talk about areas of disaster, it's really a geographic region that we are brought out to in order to assist from a hurricane, a flood, a fire, any of those types of things. And typically in that facet, we work hand in hand with FEMA and kind of complement the services that are offered by FEMA. This pandemic has had a totally different response to the agency, and we have kind of found ourselves in more of the role of being a first responder versus coming in after an actual event. So from that standpoint, we already have our economic injury disaster loans, and those have been around since the agency had a disaster division. With those loans go up to $2 million, and they are for typically for businesses, for homeowners, for renters, for nonprofits, etc. And again, those would typically be utilized in an area of disaster where there's an actual event that has occurred. In this instance, we have the economic injury for businesses, and that would be the businesses are suffering a loss of revenue, clearly because of a lack of customers, perhaps a lack of employees, whatever the case is there. That program is still up and running, and that's a direct lend from SBA. So those are federal dollars being lent out to small businesses at very affordable interest rates. Currently, again, up to $2 million. Those are 30-year terms for this particular disaster that hold an interest rate of 3.75 for profit entities and 2.75 for nonprofit entities. With the passage of the CARES Act that happened a week ago Friday, the our congressional leaders came up with the CARES Act, and it has several different components to it with respect to small business assistance. One of the components is called the Payment Protection Program, and that is for small businesses to assist them with bringing back their employees, and so they don't have to lose, you know, that particular piece of their business. Clearly, all these businesses are shut down because of mandates, both, you know, state and local, as well as, you know, a federal mandate. With that program, we actually can loan up to $10 million. That holds a 2-year term, and the interest rate for the small business applicant is at 1%. Now, again, these loans are actually brought to you or brought to the small business community through their lending institutions. So we are in the process of still adding lending institutions that are participating in the programs. But again, it's a federal guarantee for those loans. And just to give you an idea, in any typical year with the SBA loan guarantee programs, we, through our 7A and 504 channels, and again, those are just portions of the Small Business Act, through those channels, we typically would do, in 7A, I think it's around 25 or 27 million. In the 504 arena, I think last year it was 11 million. So with the CARES Act, we have now been allocated $349 billion for, I'm sorry, I should have said billion previously, but $349 billion for the loan guarantees of those particular products. Again, those are through the lending institutions. So again, we've got a lot of lenders that were able to participate immediately because they already had an agreement or a relationship with SBA. We're still in the process of adding additional lenders. Every day, every hour, that is, you know, going up with the participation of our lending partners. There's also other financial institutions that are allowed to partake or participate in that program. And so those are coming online as well, and we will be getting that information out. We have it actually up on our website as far as the lenders that are participating in the program. The other portion of the CARES Act that was beneficial to the Small Business Administration and recipients of our loan guarantee program is actually the debt relief component through the CARES Act. So any SBA loan that is currently guaranteed, regardless of how it came to us, whatever financial institution, that is on an automatic deferral for 6 months. And when I say deferral, it's the small businesses do not have to pay that. SBA will be paying the payments on that particular program. So again, something to keep in mind. Anybody that had a disaster loan through SBA, a disaster loan directly, whether again it's a homeowner, a renter, a nonprofit, a business, those are on deferral through the end of this year. So we're trying to help the economy through these particular features. And again, we're working very hard to get this accomplished. It has been really a monumental undertaking, and I can't stress that enough. We actually have hired over 1,000 people just to man the phone systems. So that'll give you kind of an idea of the scope of what we're dealing with currently. You know, you figure if there's 32 million small businesses in the country, this is just it's really hit the agency hard. So if you are one of those recipients or applicants, I should say, please be patient with us. We are doing everything we can. We have people working 3 different shifts. The phone lines are 24/7 now, and you know, we've definitely fallen short, but we're adding to staff each and every day to try to assist. So I'm happy to take some questions, Evan, if you want to try that, or if you've got some questions already lined up to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. I would like to, well, and I appreciate so much the work that you're doing. I know that you have just an overwhelming demand on your services right now. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk, and also just acknowledge the undertaking that you all are attempting to do. We've got a few minutes left, and I really want to hear also from Amanda Blackwood, the CEO of the Sacramento Metro Chamber, who is here to talk also about the rapid response work that's going on to support business here in Sacramento. So maybe I'll turn it over to Amanda, and then if we have time, if we have any time for questions, we can kind of come back to everybody. Amanda, are you on?
Thank you so much. So thank you. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and names. I think we've seen each other on Zoom more than we did in real life. So it's nice to see you. So great questions and great conversation, and agree with everything everyone's saying. Some things that are happening now that are tools are the Metro Chamber about 3 weeks ago was in that spot, realizing we have so many amazing resources out there, but for that small business owner to navigate, where do I go and what's the latest, and how the governor said something today and I don't know if that changes what I did yesterday. So we really saw the need for just an aggregation of resource that is accurate and complete. So we launched about 2 weeks ago. It's called the Rapid Response Hub. You can get to it by either going to metrochamber.org, click it on the main page, or directly rapidresponse.metrochamber.org. And you will see there 3 really distinct sections. So one that is employer, which is the, from a stay-at-home order, what does it mean? Am I an essential business? To really what people want to know is the financial resources. So all of the programming that Heather just talked about, there are direct links on there, quick links, so that you can get into that process, as well as a variety of other lending partners. We've got community banks now that if you already had a commercial line, they may be doing deferrals already. You don't need to seek anything new. So kind of that financial marketplace. Then there's a section there for employees. So a lot of questions about, is it better to lay off my team and have them have access to these benefits? Is it better to wait? Should I go part-time? Should I go half-time? I can't emphasize enough how extremely mindful our employers have been too on ensuring medical care, that, how do I work this so that my employees, if there's not active work right now, that I can keep them with the most robust patchwork of resources, so that they're okay, as well as, how do I, I've got employees that are trying to homeschool their kids now. So how can I create work schedules so that they can still be employed, but then meet the needs of their kids in the day? So there's that. And then you'll see a third section that's called local resources, which is, as the Metro Chamber, we cover 22 cities in our CAP region, and each city may have some nuance. So, City of Sacramento launched $1 million fund. City of Roseville is launching $1 million fund. Some of the counties have their own issues, like property tax. Is that, it's due, but is there a penalty if it's late? Well, for some counties, maybe, for some counties not. So it's really kind of that repository that you can go look at your particular situation and try to get, the most accurate information. So as robust as that is, one of the things that we also, I think, a week in noticed is sorting through that information is also overwhelming. So how might we create an opportunity to talk to a live person? So we were able to partner with the Sacramento Asian Chamber to stand up a hotline. We've been in soft launch this week. That launches hard launch tomorrow. You can get to that all through the hub, but I'll also tell you that it's the Rapid Response Hotline, toll-free 833-391-1919, and that is staffed with and say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, or I have credit issues and I don't know that I can apply for anything. What do I do? Or I've seen my competitors open and I thought I wasn't essential, but they're doing it. So what, just all those real life questions that somebody just needs to talk through. And we've been able to, with both organizations, repurpose our Small Business Development Center team of consultants, that it's all free to the user to just call in and ask these basic questions, or how do I start to think about recovery? I think that's a mindfulness that we really want people to consider as well, that while you're in it right now, and you are in straight up triage right now, and you're trying to make those decisions, you're also deciding, do I lay off staff? Do I incur debt? Do I go all online? Do I use contract labor? All of these questions are kind of in that framework of where I'm at now, but where do I see myself in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months? And it may make sense to utilize all of these things and bring down that low interest money. It may make sense to you to rapidly pivot. You know, you may have been in Q4 on a very low margin, and now is not the time to, you know, lean all the way into incurring other cost. Or, you know, we've got, as some talked about today, some of our membership are doing even better than they were before because they really rapidly pivoted to online learning or online meetings, or they should have been delivery. There was a latent market for delivery all along, and they just didn't do that. So now that they're doing it, they're saying, well, shoot, this is really the way to go. Or utilizing gig workers, which was the thing. I think, it's, you know, Jason put really well, this has been a major market disruption that probably would have happened anyway in regards to the use of technology and pivoting, but it would have been a much slower track. And now it's, you know, boom, market changed. And if you want to compete, you got to change with it, or, you know, it's going to pass you by. So, you know, some folks are being forced into using tools that maybe they weren't before, but there's some advantage to them utilizing those tools. And then I also just want to address briefly to the question, Rick had asked a question about, you know, recovery and how are we positioning for that? And no, I think some of you are familiar about almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, a partnership of Valley Vision, the Metro Chamber, Greater Sacramento Economic Council, and SACOG brought Brookings in to do an economic stress test. And what they said then was, you know, your digital skills gap is going to be a problem. You have a wealth gap in your most diverse populations. You really got to lean into those exportable sectors, be them advanced mobility, be them bioscience, be them research and tech. Those are all opportunities. And it was really framed in we came back from the housing recession more slowly than our other sister regions. So, hey, we should probably do something about that. Well, now we're in this moment going, yeah, all that we said is really meaningful right now. And how might we, you know, not make a philosophical argument about a more robust economy, but let's have a real practical conversation about, you know, you will have retail, hospitality, some of these roles that just may not come back right now. And we need to rapidly reskill. And might we consciously rapidly reskill into high growth sectors that are exportable, that do create the opportunity for generational wealth building. You know, you can do that and not kind of hop onto the next thing. As well as, to Damon's point, construction traditionally has been a leading indicator and an impetus for economic recovery in past recession, not pandemic recession. You know, this is a new thing for us to experience. But coming back is really, construction often, you know, leads the way on that. And those jobs are often very digital skill reliant as well, because it's, how do I use this? Farming is the same, you know, our agriculture and farming. It's absolutely boots on the ground farming. And how do I use this technology to assess water usage? How do I get higher crop yield? It's all tech. So maybe the last initiative I'd leave with you on what are we doing now is fully leaning into the need for broadband and 5G, knowing, right, all, as Joy said it, I gave my clap, knowing that we needed it anyway, right? But the Sacramento region now has a moment in time where we can fully embrace these growing industries that will position us as a competitive advantage nationally. And the need for 5G broadband has business implications. It's telehealth, it's remote working, it's all of it. So how might we now create that infrastructure that not only meets our very current needs, but truly sets the Capital Region apart for the long term, in line with the Brookings research, in line with these high yield needs, while reskilling your workforce, really all in line with a very, a real narrow play on who we want to be in the future, which will not only, meet the needs of where we were in being more robust, but will give us the advantage to rapidly recover. And we're thinking about it and we're talking about it now. So, I know that's a lot, but it's really that we're in triage, we're in focus right now, and we're going to meet those needs with real technical assistance and human voice and toolkit, but also being very mindful where we want to be and what data do we need to collect now, what policy do we need now, what advocacy do we need now that is going to give us that competitive advantage in the future, and we will come back stronger than we ever were before.
Very good. Thank you, Amanda. And thanks for both the work that you're doing around rapid response and for bringing us to that big picture, because that's a great place to leave off. And, Joy Hermsen and I were talking before the call and asking, what are the stories that we're going to tell about resiliency and about coming together and about changing systems in a way that benefits everybody? So I think, it's a great to have the space to have that conversation while also acknowledging the real pain that people are in right now and working together to do what we can to meet people's needs that they're experiencing now. So I know we're a little bit over. I'm going to move us to the next slide, please, which is just wrapping us up. So I do want to quickly announce a new hire. So speaking of virtual onboarding, that's what we've been doing in the last couple of weeks with Renee John, our new project leader in our 21st century workforce. So she's on today and listening and absorbing. And I'm sure we'll Zoom later with her to get her thoughts about it, but we're really excited to have her on board. And we're also launching a new workforce newsletter, so please keep an eye on that in the next week. I saw some questions about sharing these resources, which we absolutely will do, and I think we'll also compile some of the links and some of the things that our speakers have been talking about to make sure you can access all those resources very easily. So we'll be emailing everybody after the webinar on that. I also know that there are some questions that we couldn't get to, so we'll review those and do what we can to get back to the people who ask those questions as well with the answers that we can provide. So I just want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. We're hoping to do more of these. Oh, that's the other thing. We're going to send out a survey, just a very brief survey. If you have ideas about content or ideas for improvement, please share those, because it's really our intention to provide relevant content that can really help us get to that. What are the stories of resiliency and success and innovation that we want to see after this is all over? So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. And we'll be seeing you virtually soon again, I hope.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.